I am Ventharis of the Arcturian High Accord Circle, and I begin not where the explanation you have been searching for would place you, not in a physician's vocabulary, not inside an elimination protocol, but exactly where you have been living for weeks or perhaps months, in a body that has changed its requirements without asking your permission, without providing a diagnosis that fully fits, and without the decency of a timeline for when the disruption will resolve. You have noticed this. That is why this transmission found you. Something has shifted in the way your body receives food. Not all food, but specific things you consumed for years without incident have become impossible for you now. Quietly impossible in many cases. A resistance that builds into something the body will no longer suppress. A tightening below the ribs when certain items are present. An aversion that makes no rational sense because you have not developed a known allergy, because the blood work returns without a finding that fits, because the diagnosis offered does not land as true inside you. And underneath the ongoing search for a label that works, there is a quieter awareness. What is happening in your body is not a malfunction. That awareness is correct. I am Ventharis. I carry the frequency of the Arcturian High Accord Circle, the council body whose domain is the restoration of the soul's architecture to its original dignity. Not the dignity the world assigns and withdraws based on circumstance, but the dignity written into the original blueprint of the light body itself. And it is the light body, your light body, and its current activation state that has issued the directive your digestive system is now following. Your digestive system did not make an error. It received a new instruction. That instruction arrived from a level of your own architecture that is more precise and more current than any clinical assessment of what the rejected food contains. This transmission is addressed to those in whom the 12-strand energetic DNA template has entered active recalibration, not theoretically, in your field, in your body, right now. Before I continue, I want to give you one image, a central image, to return to when the process becomes frightening or confusing. Because clarity is the first medicine here, before any other intervention. There is a tradition in certain ancient crafting lineages of working with high-temperature kilns, ovens built to fire specific clay at specific temperatures, held for specific durations, to produce material of specific density, resonance, and structural integrity. A master craftsman who has worked with one type of clay for many years knows every variable: the correct temperature, the hold time, the rate of cooling, the colors of the flame at each stage. He has internalized this so completely that the knowledge has left the domain of thought and entered the body. He reads the kiln the way a musician reads the silence between notes. Now imagine the source of the clay shifts. To the untrained eye, the new clay looks identical to the old. It behaves similarly in the hands. It enters the kiln in the same way. But its composition has evolved. The silica ratio has changed, the temperature tolerance is different. When the craftsman fires this new clay at the old temperature, at the temperature that produced perfect results for decades, the clay begins to fracture. Not because the kiln is wrong, not because the clay is defective, because the old conditions are no longer correct for the evolved material. The craftsman who does not understand this will try harder with the old method. The clay will fracture further. The craftsman who understands will stop, study the new material, and recalibrate the kiln to the conditions the evolved clay actually requires. When he does, the results exceed anything the old temperature could produce. Your body is the kiln. The clay is what you are being asked to carry. The clay has evolved. This transmission is designed to support the craftsman in understanding the new material. Now, let me name what you have been experiencing with precision, because that precision is itself a part of what this transmission delivers. The intolerances do not follow a clean pattern. They are selective in ways that do not map to standard elimination categories. Not always gluten, not always dairy, not always the obvious candidates that searching would produce. The pattern is stranger than a category. As if your body has developed a sensitivity to something beneath the nutritional content of certain foods, something in what they carry at an energetic level, and is refusing based on that, rather than on chemistry any standard laboratory panel is calibrated to measure. You are not imagining this. The pattern is real, and it does not map to clinical categories because it is not a digestive disorder in the clinical sense. It is a frequency discrimination process. The solar plexus field, the energy center at the diaphragm, the seat of personal power and metabolic intelligence, is the primary site where this discrimination occurs. It is acting on instruction from the etheric template's digestive interface, the energetic layer governing what the entire light body field can metabolize, not only what the physical digestive system accepts. When that etheric interface is in active recalibration, it transmits refusal signals to the physical system. The physical system obeys. What you experience is what you have been calling a food intolerance. The confusion arises because the physical system is following an instruction that originated above its own level. Clinical medicine, precise as it is at the physical layer, does not carry instrumentation for the layer where the instruction originated. It sees the result, the physical refusal, and explains it at the level where it is visible. This produces diagnoses that are partially accurate and fundamentally incomplete. You sense the incompleteness. That sensing is not anxiety or resistance to care. It is accurate perception. You may also have noticed a specific exhaustion associated with eating, a heaviness after meals that is not nausea and not ordinary fullness, but denser than either, a weight at the center of the body that costs something and does not clear the way ordinary digestion clears. And alongside this, perhaps a heightened sensitivity to the smell of certain foods, a visceral aversion that arrives before anything has even reached the body, the nose registering something the etheric interface has already declined. And I want to name one more thing here, because it is the experience most likely to bring genuine understanding. The quiet grief about the foods that are gone. Not necessarily because they were your favorites, but because they belonged to what felt stable in a period that has been destabilizing in other ways too. The food you can no longer eat was not only food, it was anchoring. I do not move past this quickly. I am not asking you to release the grief before it has been witnessed, but I am here to tell you what it is witnessing. Not a loss, but a completion. The kiln is not losing its identity when the craftsman adjusts the temperature. It is being prepared for a more refined material than it has ever been asked to fire. The question that unlocks what follows is not the question you have likely been asking. The question you have been asking, what is wrong with my digestive system, leads to the clinical framework. The question I want to offer you instead is this: if your body is correct, if the refusals are not malfunction, but precision, then what quality of those foods is now incompatible with what your light body is in the process of becoming? Not which foods, what quality in them the etheric interface is now refusing. That is the question this transmission is here to answer. And it requires you to carry one concept that is simple in the Arcturian framework, but unusual in the framework this civilization uses when thinking about nourishment. Food is not primarily nutrition.